Oh, so you know how to close those for me. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavanda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Now, I don't know why there's no verse. Someone didn't write it. We're on 26. 26. Okay. Yeah, Kunda. Okay. Narayana Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamadiret. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord who is glorified in transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On the 6th day of June, 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace HG Dravida Dasa Swami Prabhupada. And we are in the 5th canto, the prayer entitled The Creative Impetus, 18th chapter. The prayer is offered to the Lord by the residents of Jammu Dweep. And I have text 26. Okay. So we'll do one word by word, and then I'll chant the verse. Antar Bahish Chakila Lokapalakaya Adrishtarupo Vicharasi Urusvanaha Sa Ishwaras Tvam Yahidam Vishenayam Vishenayan Namna Yata Darumayim Narastriyam. You can keep track on your thing there for the next day, subject to the verse.
Yeah, I thought it was the first verse, but we went to read it 2 yesterday.
That's why I'm saying keep track.
So was it 2 yesterday?
Yeah, because the first one had no purport. So.
Yes, I thought today was 25.
Okay. So those who have devices can chant along. Antar Bahischak Lokapalakaya Adrishta Rupo Vichadasyurusvanaha Sahishwarastvam Yahidam Vashenayan Namna Hita Danumayim Narastriyam Antar Bahischakila Lokapalakaya Adrishta Rupo Vichadasyurusvanaha Sa Ishwarastvam Yahidam Vashenayan Namna Hita Darumayim Narastriyam Antar Bahischakila Lokapalakaya Adrishta Rupo Vichadasyurusvanaha Sa Ishwarastvam Yahidam Vashenayan Namna Hita Darumayim Narastriyam Antar Bahischakila Lokapalakaya Adrishta Rupo Vichadasyurusvanaha Sahishwarastvam Yahidam Vashenayan Nahita Darumayim Narastriyam Antar Bahischakila Lokapalakaya Adrishta Rupo Vichadasyurusvanaha Sa Ishwarastvam Yahidam Vashenayan Namna Hita Darumayim Narastriyam Mukunda Antar Bahischakila Lokapalakaya Adrishta Rupo Vichadasyurusvanaha Sahishwarastvam Yahidam Vashenayan Namna Hita Darumayim Narastriyam. Antar Bahischakila Lokapalakaya Adrishta Rupo Vichadasyurusvanaha Sahishwarastvam Yahidam Vashenayan Namna Hita Darumayim Narastriyam. Okay. Not yet. Okay. Synonyms. Antaha, within. Bahihi, without. Cha, also. Akila Lokapalakai, by the leaders of the different planets, societies, kingdoms, and so on. Adrishtarupaha, not seen. Vichadasi, you wander. Uru, very great. Swanaha, who sounds. Vedic mantras. Saha, he. Ishvaraha, the Supreme Controller. Tvam, you. Yaha, who. Idam, this. Vashe, under control. Anayat, has brought. Namna, by different names like Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. Yatha, exactly like. Darumayim, made of wood. Naraha, a man. Striyam, a doll. Translation. So this is, they're praying to the fish incarnation still. My dear Lord, just as a puppeteer controls his dancing dolls and a husband controls his wife, your Lordship controls all the living entities in the universe, such as the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. Although you are in everyone's heart as the supreme witness and commander, and are outside everyone as well, the so-called leaders of societies, communities, and countries cannot realize you. Only those who hear the vibration of the Vedic mantras can appreciate you. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is Antarbahi, present within and without everything. One must overcome the delusion caused by the Lord's external energy and realize His presence both externally and internally. In Srimad Bhagavatam 1.8.19, Srimati Kunti Devi has explained that Krishna appears in this world nato nachadado yata, exactly like an actor dressed as a player. In the Bhagavad Gita 1861, Krishna says, Ishwarak savabhutanam viddesher janatishtati. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjun. The Lord is situated within everyone's heart and outside as well. Within the heart, He is the Super Soul, the incarnation who acts as the advisor and witness. Yet although God is residing within their hearts, foolish people say, I cannot see God, please show Him to me. Everyone is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, exactly like dancing dolls controlled by a puppeteer or a woman controlled by her husband. A woman is compared to a doll, Darumayi, because she has no independence. She should always be controlled by a man. Still, due to false prestige, a class of women wants to remain independent. What to speak of women? All living entities are prakriti, female, and therefore dependent on the Supreme Lord, as Krishna himself explains in the Bhagavad Gita. Apare mitastvanyam prakritim vidhi me param. The living entity is never independent. Under all circumstances, he is dependent on the mercy of the Lord. The Lord creates the social divisions of human society, Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, and ordains that they follow rules and regulations suited to their particular position. In this way, all members of society remain always under the Supreme Lord's control. Still, some people foolishly deny the existence of God. Self-realization means to understand one's subordinate position in relation to the Lord. When one is thus enlightened, he surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is liberated from the clutches of the material energy. In other words, unless one surrenders to the lotus feet of the Lord, the material energy in its many varieties will continue to control him. No one in the material world can deny that he is under control. The Supreme Lord, Narayan, who is beyond this material existence, controls everyone. The following Vedic mantra confirms this point. Eko Havai Narayana Asit. Foolish persons think Narayan to be on the platform of ordinary material existence. Because they do not realize the natural constitutional position of the living entity, they concoct names like Daridra Narayan, Swami Narayan, or Mithya Narayan. However, Narayan is actually the supreme controller of everyone. This understanding is self-realization. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara. So this is a prayer to Matsya avatar, but this is a generic prayer, or a prayer that could be offered to any incarnation of Krishna. And the main point here that we're getting is that Krishna is present everywhere. God is present everywhere, within and without. I don't know how many lectures I've heard Prabhupada quote this verse, Ishvarak Sarvabhutana Videshayadana Tishti. This is one of his favorites. That the Supreme Controller is present in the hearts of every living being as a supersoul. And we're living entities are wandering around on the body as if on a machine that's created by the material energy. And those who are in illusion have this illusion of independence. We have our own things that we can do. Even you see the animals, the insects, they're doing their thing, right? I can go this way, or I can go that way. I'm free, right? And if you try to stop them, they'll go around this way. They all have their little sense of control. But what's actually happening there? Like we have our human body, but it's as Maharaj was saying yesterday and pointing out, which is so obvious, it's been given to us, and it is a super complicated machine. It's obviously been finely engineered by a higher intelligence. Anyone who's a little intelligent can see that. So, and we can see this is one of the let's say the most prominent zeitgeist or common understanding in this present historical period, and I'm talking about after the pandemic hit. Suddenly we have a face-to-face with a worldwide disease which is not sparing anybody. In other words, it's a threat to everybody. And it's completely deadly. If you get it, it's nightmarish. You can't even die with your relatives around you. And to die from asphyxiation like that, oh my God. So suddenly it's very prominent. It's in everybody's face who's a little aware, except little babies and children who can't hear or read, And so it's affected everyone. And in one sense, it's made people more serious about ultimate questions, and we found here and in many other places that there's a heightened interest in Krishna consciousness. Because the basic preaching, you begin the Bhagavad Gita reading, and before long you're reading about the difference between the body and the soul, and that the body dies, but the soul is eternal. Jayate mriyate vakadacha nayambut bhava vidavanabhuya. This is another favorite of Prabhupada's. For the soul is never birth or death. It does not perish when the body dies. So this is essential information. Because here we're confronted by our mortality. Maya means that you're able to forget about your mortality. You're able to forget about all the limitations and all of the horrors in material life, and you can try to enjoy. You can have this illusion that, if I do this, if I eat this, if I meet this person of the opposite sex, I can enjoy, And that sense of enjoyment, or anticipating that enjoyment, helps you to forget that it's all limited by time. That eventually this is going to turn into a total nightmare. Your body will be crippled or unable to enjoy or unable to even function properly. That's the fate of everybody. But you can forget it. Maya helps you forget. That's what Maya does. She covers you over. There's two energies that she uses. The, Avarnatmaka and Prakshetatmaka. Avarnatmaka is first. That's the covering of your knowledge. And Praksheta means throwing down into the material world and binding you tightly. This is what Maya does. It's her thankless task, Prabhupada said. There's a prison warden, reformatory, let's say. So, Srila Prabhupada's mission, when he came, and the mission of all sincere followers of the Lord, is to give the good news, this idea of the gospel, You know, I put it into a little poem. Each and everybody dies. Nobody dies. Wake up, and open your eyes. You're not that body, you're a pure spirit soul. Chant the holy name and attain life's goal. So the idea that the body dies, but you don't die. The body, they're not the body. That's an essential first step. And then it's also important to understand who's behind everything. That's the Atato Brahma Jigyasa. This is like the first of the Vedanta Sutras. These Vedanta Sutras, a sutra is a little aphorism, very, very terse, that embodies essential transcendental information. And since they're so terse, they need explanation. And so there's always a commentary. But the first one is very easy to understand. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Now then, or therefore. How do you start a book with therefore? Because the whole Vedanta Sutra comes at the end of all of the other Vedas. In other words, it's the essential information about all the Vedas. But it needs commentary, and therefore you have the Bhagavatam. But the first, now therefore, having come to the human form of life, you should inquire into Brahman. Well, what is Brahman? Second sutra. Janmadhyasya yataha. From which everything has come. And then there's the word adi. Every syllable counts with these sutras. Janmadi yataha. So the adi is maintaining and destroying. From which everything has emanated, who maintains everything, and who ultimately destroys everything. And this is expanded in what is that? That's Krishna. He says in the Bhagavatam, which is the actual commentary by the same author. You know, when the author writes his own commentary, you know that he's getting it right? So aham evasam evagre nanyad yat sarasat param pastaraham yaritacha yovishisheta sosmiham. This is the first verse of the Chatur Shloki Bhagavatam. The whole Bhagavatam condensed into 4. In other words, the essential 4 verses from which everything expands. Krishna speaking to Brahma. And then it was expanded, and then it was expanded to what we have, 18,000 verses. So what does he say there? Is that before there was anything, I existed. And after there is everything manifest, material, it is only I that exist through my energies. That's how I explained. And after it's all wound up, I will continue to exist. Now the only person who can say that, truthfully, is God. This is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Think about it. Before there was any manifestation, I existed. So I'm not part of the material world. And after the material manifestation exists, it must come from me because I only existed. So my energies have manifested. That's explained in Bhagavad Gita. And after it's all wound up and Mahavishnu breathes everything in, I will continue to exist. So that's who we should search out. This is Krishna speaking. So we should search for Krishna. That's the mission of human life. Finding out who we really are, what the source of everything is, what's that relationship between ourselves and this Supreme Brahman, this Supreme Personality of Godhead, and what are the details of that relationship. So that's what Gaudiya Vaishnava teaches. All the genuine Vaishnava Sampradayas teach that. So the Bhagavatam expands on the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we find that he sometimes comes in different forms. Why not? He can do anything he wants. No one else can say that. We have the illusion sometimes that we can do that, and then we fall on our face. We're completely controlled and bound up. Eat a little bit too much, you get sick. Don't eat enough, you get sick. Go here, do that, or create a society where the air and the water and the land is poisoned. Everybody gets sick. We're all walking around with all kinds of microplastics in our body now. Not healthy. You can't do anything about it. You can't get it out. How did that happen? Artificial civilization built on the principle of more and more and more and more sense gratification. So Srila Prabhupada, as a pure representative of the line coming down from Krishna and from Lord Chaitanya, he came to preach the truths of the Bhagavatam. Mahabhagavat, teaching the other Bhagavat, the book Bhagavat. So now he's giving us this little expansion here, this purport on the verse, that how this is all about control, right? Your Lordship controls all living entities in the universe. So, in other words, he manifested these different qualities. When you talk about Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, you talk about people in different modes, or predominant modes, because the modes are never pure in material world. Predominantly goodness, you'll find the Brahmins. And then passion, pure passion, the Kshatriyas. Mixed passion and ignorance, the Vaishyas. And predominantly ignorant, the Shudras. And then there's even lower, outside, more and more ignorance. So, the idea, what is this for? Why did Krishna create this? Well, this is a way in which society can be organized for everybody's upliftment. It's explained in the beginning, in the second chapter of the first canto. Atak pumbir dvija shrestha varnashrama vibhagasha svanustitasya dharmasya sangsiddhiya haritoshanam. That is, he's speaking to the sages of Naimisharanya, and he says that this division of Varna Ashram, Varna Vibhagasha, means the division that I just mentioned to you, plus the Brahmacharis and the Grihasthas, Vanaprastha, Sannyasis, these 8 divisions, that when perfectly engaged, everyone is doing his duty. Suvanustitasya means that you're nicely following your swadharma, but the perfection of it is that Hari is satisfied. In other words, it's all meant to facilitate one's gradual progression in devotional service. And you can see how the Shudras, without Krishna, they'll never be satisfied. They're always resentful of the higher classes. They want to have more. They want to try to move up. Let's have a strike. Or maybe we'll become a little criminal, try to get more than we were allotted. None of them will be satisfied. The Brahmins try to lord it over the Kshatriyas and the others, and the Kshatriyas definitely lord it over, and they're not following the Brahmins. The whole thing falls apart. And that's Krishna's in the center. When Krishna's in the center, then you could imagine, okay, let's have a big festival, kirtan. So everybody gets to chant. Nobody's worrying Vaishya Shudra. And at the end, there's a big feast, and everybody gets fed, right? The Shudras get fed, and even they'll get charity, right, from the higher class. So they have the beautiful ornaments and clothes they give you. In other words, there's harmony because Krishna's in the center. That's the key. Krishna's in the center, and that alone satisfies. If you can just, it's proved by the 6 Goswamis and our whole line that no matter whether you come from a very rich situation or a very poor situation, if you become experiencing Krishna consciousness and you're chanting nicely, you're completely satisfied. You can be completely satisfied with practically nothing. Look at these 6 Goswamis writing the highest literature. You read the Stavamala, you read the Vidagdhamara or the Brihad Bhagavatam, the Jiva Goswami's Sandarbhas. It's beautiful literature, philosophically explained, and wonderful descriptions of Krishna and his pastimes. The sound itself is attractive. It's all about Krishna, about his dancing and the peacocks, and the whole thing. So the subject matter is great, and the way it's presented is all attractive. And what do you need? I mean, you need a voice, which is not always there. You need a voice and an ear, and knowledge. You need association. That's the real rare thing to get. So Srila Prabhupada came to give his association, and the main way he's given it is through his books. These books, I worked on this chapter. I remember, working on this chapter. I really remember the prayer in the Shringadev. That was an injunction. Anyone who wants to be free of material desire should offer his prayer to the Lord Nrsingadev, as Prahlad Maharaj did in this verse. I immediately memorized the verse. So all of these verses and purports are all prayers and wonderful instructions of Srila Prabhupada. So Krishna is within and without, but he's not obvious. You can't see him. And so this is I think the first prayer of Kunti that he quotes here. Namasye Purasham Tajam Ishvaro Prakrute Padam Alaksham Savabhutanam Nato Nata Dadoyata. Right? So she begins her prayers with offering obeisance. That's the first word, namaste. And the last word of the last prayer is namostate. She bows down. So these prayers are wonderful and conclusive. Prabhupada loved them, and he actually made a recording of them, believe it or not, of chanting the Sanskrit. And so he's like a dancer on a stage. In other words, when Krishna comes to this world as himself, and he's not obviously known because he's hidden, he's acting, or he's in his highest manifestation as a human form and engaging in pastimes and not really controlling the universe, four arms, all that. So he's like an actor on a stage. And I often think that he's like the director too. In Vrindavan, he's organizing all these pastimes to draw out the most intense and varied emotions from the gopis and his parents and his friends and like that, and even the cows, everyone. Just think of the Kaliya Leela. I give that example, So here, the whole thing is arranged, So first of all, he has this whole. He jumps in. First of all, what happens is his friends die. They drink the poison water of the Yamuna, and they die. And Krishna glances at them with love and brings them back to life. It says there, they realize they actually died and came back to life. So we can't have this poison lake in the middle of Vrindavan. So Krishna dives in. Of course, he's immune to the poison. And he challenges Kali, and then there's this, he goes around and around and around. And then he grabs him. Kali grabs him in the coils. And meanwhile, the bad omens are going all over Vrindavan, And the real emergency is that Krishna went to curd the cows without Balaram that day, because it was Balaram's birthday or something. And Balaram is always protecting Krishna. He's the big brother. So this is a big emergency. So they follow his footprints out, and they come to the lake, and there they see Krishna. And oh my God, they're fainting. They want to go into the lake, which would be deadly. And Balaram stops them. So what is this? Is Krishna? He's putting his friends and his parents and everybody into such anxiety. What kind of mercy is that? Well, you can see what he's doing. He's setting it up for even more intense emotion, expression of love. And after a couple of hours of that, when they've little delicate-bodied Krishna, they don't know he's God. That's the point. He's hiding that. Yoga Maya. They don't know he's all powerful. Balaram knows. He's stopping everything. Don't worry, he'll be fine. So then he breaks out. Just try to imagine. You don't know this beloved boy. Everyone loves him so much, and finally, instead of dying, he breaks out of the coils. He jumps up onto the hoods, and he starts this dance. And this dance is the main subject of writing in the Goswamis. And I read once that all the different beats were manifest there when Krishna was dancing on those hoods. That's the origin of all the different meters in the Sanskrit and the ragas and everything. So then he starts dancing and punishing the hoods, and finally, Kaliya surrenders. He said, well, "Who is this? This must be the Supreme Personality of Godhead." So you can imagine the relief when he comes out of the water, and somehow, he's got all these ornaments that Kali surrendered, and he had a whole realm under the water, and he had the Kaustubha gem was there, and other garments and ornaments and things, and he gives them to Krishna. Comes out of the water, and he's dressed in beautiful garments and all the water, and everyone gives him a big hug, one after another. So this is Krishna he's not only an actor on the stage, but he's also the director. And all this pastime with the gopis are the same thing. He's meeting them and they have wonderful pastimes, and then he separates. He goes to Dwarka, but he's still there because he's internal. He's within and without. So this is important for us too, because we can, if we become more advanced, we can feel Krishna's presence within our heart and see him outside as well. See him working outside as well. So you never feel the separation from Krishna. You feel separation, but then you feel, he's actually here. See meeting and separation. So that's what is being described here. That we're all Prakriti acting as Purusha. Another one of my favorite verses from Bhagavatam. So those who know this one can chant it. Purusha prakatisto hi bhunkte prakatijan gunan karanang gunasangosya sadasadyoni janmasu. It's such an important verse for understanding how our destiny is created. So first of all, now in the 7th chapter, it's clear that we're Prakriti. He just described earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego. These 8 are my inferior energies. None of them is animate, although we sometimes think the mind has a mind of its own. But there's more and more subtle and gross elements. They're subtle and gross energies of Krishna. They're Prakriti. But they're apara Prakriti. They're the lower energy, meaning they're not conscious. They're not conscious. But then there's the higher energy, para Prakriti. Who is that? That's us. Prakriti Vidyam Jiva Bhuta, we're the jivas. Yedam Dayate Jagat. And because of us, the whole universe is being sustained. And we try to exploit it. Why is this body a body? And stay as a body from day to day and year to year? Because we're inside. As soon as we leave, it's no longer being sustained, and it devolves back into its elements. Everybody can know that. We have to bury it, burn it, get rid of it. So we're sustaining it, our presence there. And Krishna is also there in the Super Soul. So this is basic information. Now this verse in the 13th chapter says Purusha, but I thought we're Prakriti. So the idea is that we're Prakriti trying to be Purusha. The Purusha is the male, is the enjoyer. And Prakriti is meant to facilitate that enjoyment. And then the Prakriti enjoys. So, Purusha Prakriti Stohi. We're Purusha within the material Prakriti. Bhunkte experiences, not necessarily enjoys. Bhunkte Prakriti Jan Gunan. We're experiencing the 3 modes of nature generated from that Prakriti. You see? But then where does our free will come in? That's the 3rd line. Karanam guna sangosya. The guna sangha, as we associate with those modes, we have free will to a certain extent. We're not completely, controlled at every moment. Like the lower animals, they don't have any basic free will. But because we have the higher intelligence, we have minute free will. So we can choose to associate with the certain combination of modes. If we want to, the more that we want immediate gratification, the more we're in the mode of ignorance. If you want deferred self-gratification, you're more in the mode of passion. Okay, look. I got no money right now, but I'll get a good education, I'll get some money, and then I'll, get really a nice house and car, and then I'll really enjoy. So right now, I got to study really hard and go through all these austerities and things. But then, I'll enjoy like anything. That's the mode of passion. The enjoying spirit is there, but you project it so. And then the mode of goodness is that, well, I don't think I should, just be trying to enjoy. Let me inquire into truth, and let me, not just burn out the senses. In other words, you're at the cusp of being enlightened. You'll be some more receptive to the message of Bhagavad Gita and the others. That's the mode of goodness, which we try to cultivate is very useful. That's why you find, at least I found for myself, that when I became a vegetarian and I started doing yoga, of course I became, I was exposed to some of these philosophies, but it became much more interesting to me. If you're always in the mode of, passion, looking for enjoy, then it can bounce right off you. So that. So that's where our free will comes in. As you associate with those modes, then you develop a certain mentality, and that carries you to your next life. And sadasad yoni, we can become an asad yoni. You could lose the human form of life entirely, or get a human life that's very degraded and not much chance of spiritual advancement. So that's a key verse. That then we should say, well, how can I, live in this material world for my best future to advance? And that's right at the beginning of the Bhagavatam in the 5th chapter, where Narada Muni is speaking to Vyasadeva. Tasyaiva heto prayateta kovido nalabhyate brahmadama paryada. Therefore, since actually each time we're born, the amount of happiness and the stress that we're going to be in is already programmed in. It's going to happen. We may struggle this way and that way, but we're going to get a certain amount of happiness, a certain amount of, so there's no point in striving very hard to try to increase the happiness. Then what should I strive for? That's this verse, key verse. Prabhupada quoted it 1,000,000 times. Tasyaiva heto. Heto means a goal in this case. Prayateta, should really strive hard for it as your main object in life. Kovida, if you're intelligent. What goal? Nalabhyate yad brahmadhamapayada, the goal that you cannot find anywhere in this universe. Up and down the universe. By wandering up and down. You go to Brahmaloka, you go to Patala, you can't find it. Tasyaiva heto prayat nalabhyate yad brahmadhamapayada talabhyate dukkha vadanyatak to come. This is the one that says you're going to get a certain amount of dukkha, a certain amount of sukha. So forget about that. That's going to happen automatically by the force of time, which is impossible to stop, and playing out your karma. So what's the goal that you won't get anywhere in the universe? The transcendent Lord. In other words, everything that's outside of the universe. We should strive for Krishna consciousness, going back home, back to God, to get out of the modes of nature entirely and be situated in pure goodness, the Vasudeva condition. No more death, no more birth, no more pandemics and all this other craziness. So that we should know about that and strive for it. That's what the Bhagavatam is giving us. And Prabhupada says, to understand our subordinate position. In other words, we're battling with this false ego. We're trying to lord it over our little piece of the material energy. We have to give that up and use our independence to dovetail, to surrender to the higher desire of the Supreme Lord, as given to us through the Shastra and the Guru and the Sadhus. You know, well, I don't know what to, yes, then just open the book. It's obvious what Krishna wants you to do. So this takes some faith and some good association. And so that's the import of this verse and purport. Is that Krishna comes in all these different forms for the same reason, to facilitate the living entities waking up and taking up their natural position again. Everyone in this material world is in a diseased condition of life, is in prison, is not natural, and cannot, by as hard as you work and as high as you go within this universe, you cannot find a position where you're going to be completely satisfied forever. You may go to Brahma Loka and live as long as Brahma, but you still will come to the point of death and disappointment. But if you go to Goloka Vrindavan, if we're actually able to become pure and completely dovetailed with Krishna's desires, then no coming back. Yadgatvanandavartante tadama paramamama. One who goes there never comes back. So that should be our goal. Okay, it's 8:30. Question?
I had two things. The first was you referred to the verse Ishvara Sarvabhutanam. Now I'm still confused about that, the second edition translation, and I think I asked you about it before, and you said, I think my guru was the one who put that comma in toward the end, as seated is on a machine made of the material energy. But to me it seems without the comma, then it would say that that machine is made of the material energy. But with the comma, it seems to then say that, to be instead saying that the living entities are made of the material energy. So I don't see why the comma should be there. But you know what I mean? On that verse, why is that comma there? How am I reading it incorrectly?
No, I don't know. The living entity is not made of material energy.
Well, I know that, but I mean the comma seems to... I don't understand why the comma is there.
About that comma.
Yeah.
And he said something like, for emphasis, or I forget exactly what. But really, the thing, the grammar says, as far as I could tell, made by the material energy, Maya, if you study it. So it's made by the material energy of the material energy.
So the Sanskrit says that, but not our translation says made of.
Right,
but
right. So I think it's a, you know, that's something that I think if you take it out, it's not going to really change the meaning much. I think the living entity is wandering on a machine made in the material energy.
I think the living entity is seated on a machine as if seated as on a machine made of the material energy. But with the kama,
You apply that to the living entity?
it says living entity, kama, seated as on a machine, kama, made of the material energy. But if there's no kama, do you see what I'm saying?
Okay, I'm looking it up. Let's see. Bhagavad Gita 1861, I believe. Huh? Yeah. Okay. So here we go. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. I don't see that the made of material energy applying to the entities. Is that what that's how you read it?
That's how I read it, yeah. So you'd say...
Well, then it's even more of a good reason to take that comma out, because I was...
Well, that's what I was thinking, yeah, but you're saying that there's definitely a proper way to read it. You can read that without thinking.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, has anyone else ever thought that?
Are you saying there should be no comma there?
Well, I just thought that's what I would have thought, but I was wondering...
No, but I mean, if the comma is in there, have you ever thought that it refers to the living entities who are made of the material energy? I mean, maybe because we know that it's
I know
not.
philosophically it's not, but yeah. Anyway, that's all.
I'll look into it.
The other one was just that when you were saying, you were bringing up how the living entity, there's not much you can do because you have a certain amount of happiness and distress that you're already, guaranteed this lifetime. So recently I was thinking about that and wondering if, because sometimes I've said that you can't really help living entities in this world with charity and mundane charity because they're already going to enjoy or suffer so much this life. But in one sense, you could say, I'm not saying we would say that this would be our priority, but couldn't you could say that, well, you can help them because you can guarantee their next life will be more happiness and less distress, because their next life isn't guaranteed. It's just this life that's guaranteed. So I could maybe affect my next life's enjoyment as opposed to distress, or someone else's next life enjoyment.
So you can help their next life by teaching them how to be charitable or something like that?
I'm just saying,
karma.
not that we think that's paltry and it will, somewhere down the line, it's a dangerous... but technically speaking...
But the thing is, time is so urgent that, when Srila Prabhupada, the famous pastime where he's in Mayapur, and it was a big festival, maybe it was Gaur-Purnima or something, and there were some dogs and children or something going through the old leaf plates, they throw leaf plates, looking for some food. And one of his main associates, I forget who it was looking at, was it Jaiva Thakur? Yeah, maybe it was Jaiva. And he says, "Oh, Prabhupada, sometimes I feel so sad to see these people." And Prabhupada said, "Why only sometimes?" And then he said, "No one should go hungry within 10 miles of the temple." And that's when they built this huge airport hangar of a prasadam pavilion. And I remember going there, and there was always people lined up. They had their little tiffins, and they would feed everybody kitri and everything like that, So what was that? Well, of course, it's prasadam. So it's not just food, we're not just food for life, but it's always prasadam. So there's an element to it. And I always thought that it's important, I don't know if this was official policy, that when we give out this food, we used to have a truck here early day when I first came. Someone was going out to feed the poor guys. That the people know what it is. There's something that tells them this is not just ordinary food. Yes, you're welcome to take as much as you want, the kitri, but know that this is sacred food, and here's a little sheet of paper explaining it, so that there's some element there of spiritual instruction with it, and you understand it. Because we're not into mundane charity. There's mundane charity to help people. Yes, we feel bad that they're suffering, but we'll go and do a kirtan and do prasadam, so people get the spiritual element to it also. Then it becomes auspicious. That's the thing. Anyone else? Yeah, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, just want to let you know there is one question pending on the Zoom.
Okay, we'll call in a minute.
My understanding is that everybody has their certain karma, their happiness and distress, and the only thing that could change that is coming in contact with Krishna, getting a book or chanting Hare Krishna or prasadam. That's the only thing that could change that karma. Isn't that the case?
Well, that's true, but in other words, I guess it can change. It will change the character of the way that you experience the karma, because you're going to get something, but Krishna can minimize it, so he can change it. So, once you're a devotee, then all bets are off, in a sense. First of all, the happiness, that which is of great suffering for someone who is not in Krishna consciousness is not suffering, cannot be not suffering at all. Just like Haridas Thakur, he was getting beaten in 22 marketplaces, but he didn't feel a thing. That Lord Chaitanya was on his back. But that's a principle that's there. I like to quote this verse from the Sadhu Sangashtaka. This is the third canto, 25th chapter, probably 24th verse or something like 23rd verse. Yeah, Bhagavatam, third canto. There's Kapila Dev's first teachings to his mother is the importance of associating with sadhus. It says, what does it say? Pasangam majanam pasham atmana kavayo vidu sahisha sadhushukato mokshadvaram apavatam. That prasangam, that we're all burdened by very strong attachments, Ajanam pasham, they're like very powerful ropes binding us to this world. The ropes in the heart, the knots in the heart. So that strong attachment has to be turned from matter to the sadhus. In other words, you should become attached to associating with them, the sangha. And then who's a sadhu? There's 3 verses describing who a sadhu is, And then one of those verses says, Manashriya kata mrishta shinvanti katayanti cha tapandi bhavadastapa naita mangata chetasa. And what this says is that what do these sadhus do? One of the main things they do is always absorb themselves in hearing and chanting the very sweet vibrations describing me. Manashriya kata mrishta shinvanti katayanti. And what's the result? Well, one of the results is that they don't feel the miseries very much. Tapandi vivadastapan. Naitan mangata chetasa, because their minds are absorbed in me. So the idea is that happiness and distress can be adjusted in this way, is that the bliss of Krishna consciousness and the absorption of Krishna consciousness makes you able to tolerate so many things. We saw this with Prabhupada. Those last days and weeks, the doctor said, "Oh, he should be, screaming in agony at this. His body had reduced. He wasn't eating, and it's like he's lying on the bed. And he said the bones are now on the nerves, and people would come to visit Prabhupada, and they would cry because Prabhupada said, "Oh, how are you doing? Do you have any prasadam?" He's asking them if they've had prasadam already, and they would, to see this amazing compassion and his tolerance. So that's once you get to that state, obviously the joy, the happiness is spiritual, and it's obliterating all the material happiness and pain that's coming from the karma. So that's another way it's changed. But ordinarily, in other words, don't stay, what Narada is saying, don't stay a materialist. And this is repeated in 11th canto when the Yogendra is, I'll show you later. Because it's a fool's errand. In other words, if you just stay a complete materialist and work so hard to... Okay, luckily, hardly anything happened. I'll clean it up. Then, it's futile. You're going to suffer as much as you're going to suffer. Like these billionaires, multi-billionaires, then something comes out and their name is in the gutter, because they abused some woman or something like that. Here they are and they can't control it and they're suffering, So it's a mix, and so therefore one should strive for Krishna consciousness to get to the point where at every moment you can relish your relationship with Krishna and live as simply as possible and as austerely as possible, and you won't be suffering at all. Whereas if you're just a materialist and you're walking around like the Goswamis in Vrindavan under a tree, you're just another homeless guy, trying to enjoy a little free cell phone, and it's tragic. Or you could be chanting tremendous, shlokas and reading Vidagdha Madhava, and you're at the highest levels of bliss. What is that? I'll end with this. Gopi Bhavara Samatabdula Hari Kalola Magno Mahua. Describes these Goswamis, Chak Batur. They had three of them were very, very wealthy. Raghunath Das, Sanatan, and Rupa. And influential, especially Rupa and Sanatan. And they gave it all up as tuchavat, insignificant. And out of mercy, they became very austere and took on the kopin, and the kanta, the rejected clothes. But then the third line says, Gopi Bhavadasam, they were diving and surfacing in the highest levels of bhakti, prema, and the love of the gopis for Krishna. So what's the better deal? To be the prime minister and the finance minister and be criticized by the Brahmin community because you're serving the Muslims? Or to leave all that and serve Lord Chaitanya and go to Vrindavan? It's obviously a better deal to come to the point of always experiencing the highest bliss for eternity, rather than this flickering happiness that results in pandemics and climate change and destruction. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. We have a time for the question from the Zoom. I'm not going to guess who it's by, but...
Yes, Dravida Prabhu, may I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, Dandavat Pranam. Prabhu, my question is, if Narayan is actually the supreme controller of everyone, and no one controls him, how do you explain that pure love controls the Lord?
Because he agrees to be controlled. He takes pleasure in being controlled, like Krishna takes pleasure in getting bound up by Mother Yashoda and scolded. Because it's done out of pure love. It's not done out of fear of God. The Indra's blowing the winds out of fear of God, and all the that's not so pleasing. That's management. Managing the universe. But when it comes to what Krishna really wants to do, he wants to enjoy the rasa vaisa, just as we do. Life, all of this being in the body, what's the use of it? So that you can have some rasa, some exchange, with others or with something inanimate, something. So Krishna enjoys. That's what he aspires for. That's where he takes enjoyment. Raso vaisa, rasamevayam labdvanandi bhavati. And the living entity, when we regain our position of rasa in relation to Krishna, we also become anandis, completely blissful. That's what this is all about. This activity. So that's why, because it's you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila chapter 4. It's all explained there, where Krishna says, when my gopis scold me with sulkily, and they scold me, this steals my mind away from the words of the Vedas. Right? In other words, awe and reverence is not that tasty. But there's conjugal ras and madhurya ras and all these things. That's what's really what Krishna loves. And that's what the living entities love when we find out about it and experience. So that's why, because it's more fun for him. After all, he's just about Leela, right? Leela means you can do it or you don't have to do it. So all of this that you read about in Vrindavan, he's managing it. He's still the controller. But he's also forgetting himself. That's also in this fourth chapter. Both of us will forget our positions and will be reveling in these conjugal ras, with the gopis. So that's the idea. It's very high understanding. Okay?
Yes, better than okay as usual. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hare
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Okay. Class tonight, for those who are interested.
Prabhu, can we announce your Gita class? Tell everybody that.
I also just did, but I'll do it more formally. Tonight at 7:15, we will resume our Gita class, and hopefully we can do it without stoppage. Hare Krishna, is that okay?
Sure, Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare Bol. Hare Bol.